Welcome back to Literacy Kaleidoscope, where your host, Steph, also known as Shield of Paula, managed to put down a recording schedule. We'll see how well it works. But yeah, this episode we're going to talk about If I See You Again Tomorrow, a time loop with an interesting twist. And we're going to talk about how kind of reflects on how certain people with anxiety and depression feel, as well as how one-sided or how hard it is for teens to understand complex relationship aspects. Can't wait for you guys to hear about this book that I found a while back that I really enjoyed. If I See You Again Tomorrow is about a young man who, like I said, is stuck in a time loop. Although we aren't starting off the book with him starting to get stuck in a time loop, he's already been in the time loop for a couple of hundreds of days at this time. So that's a lot. And he describes how he went through a whole process of like, oh my gosh, should I do some wild things like skipping school and reading at home or something? He didn't do like crazy things because he's not that kind of crazy person, which is kind of really interesting for his own character. But the interesting aspect of him is the fact that you have an understanding he has kind of like a conflict with his mother for reasons, and that he's feeling stuck. And that he has a lot of anxiety, which he discusses it with his therapist. And so he's just living the same day again and again. When a student just shows up in his classroom, he's never met this guy, and he just kind of rocks his world because here's someone who's like changing the timeline, changing the time loops. And so he spends a day with him. He really kind of lives with him. And he's like, okay, so the day happens again. I'm going to find him and we're going to talk about how to get out of the time loop. But he doesn't show up. And so he has to put himself in a position where he goes back to the same people and he has to make himself uncomfortable and really meet these people to be able to find out more about the person, which you think would be really easy, except out of all the people he meets and they hang out with and he thinks the other guy is great friends with, only one of them he's actually friends with. And it's kind of crazy for him to like learn this, that someone can be so open that they can only meet in one day and automatically they act like they're best friends. And that's hilarious and crazy. And I also like admit, as someone who's an introvert kind of dealing with anxiety, that I think that's an amazing ability. Is something that only is superhuman kind of ability in my mind, as well as the main character of both. So the story is kind of like that. It's kind of like him learning how to get out of his own comfort zone while everyone around him is still not moving forward as much as he is. Like he's moving, he's progressive, he's becoming a better person while everyone else is still stuck in this cycle. And there's a whole theory of like there's other people, shockingly, that have been stuck in this time loop, which is great. And there's a whole thing about how they managed to get out, and then there's a time limit. But it's mostly of him learning how to be uncomfortable in uncomfortable situations. And the whole like idea of like you grow when you're slightly uncomfortable becomes a big thing for him. That's a lesson that I was learned myself too as someone who has anxiety and depression, that the only way to grow is by being uncomfortable. Slightly uncomfortable. But it's kind of hard to recognize when it's a good uncomfortable and a bad uncomfortable, because I'm always uncomfortable because of my anxiety. But it's a fascinating story that kind of reflects the whole anxiety and depression in this really nice, delightful piece of work. And also, we find out later on in the book that the reason why he has kind of this adversary relationship with his own mother is the fact that he found out the day before the time loop that his parents are getting a divorce. And for some reason, he blames his mother for the divorce, mostly because I think she's the first one to speak about it, about the fact that his dad is leaving the house and is like moving away, and there's a whole complicated reason for it. And it's not his mother's fault. And it's fascinating and interesting. And there's a whole character that is dealing with grief. And there's another character who is specifically about like putting themselves in a vulnerable situation. And there's a they go to like a movie theater, and the person who is the ticket guy is trying to go into theater, and he's like, I'm terrifying of doing auditions because I've never done auditions, and he reads lines with him and he practices with him, and by the end of the book he actually agrees to go to like this acting classes, because the guy was like, yeah, there's an improv class, and like, you want to join, like if you rejoin, like I get a discount. And I'm like, that's a really sweet way to like invite someone in. And so he also finds a way to be more confident in himself. He's like, I'm not a baker, but I wouldn't really call myself a baker. And he gets the advice that, do you bake? Yeah, then you're a baker. And that's the same thing with like anything. Do you do the thing? Then you're that. It doesn't mean that you're a professional, but you're still doing the activity. And that kind of like confidence that he gains from other people that he's slowly learning about, even though they don't know much about him. Well, in a lot of situations would have been like, oh, he could use that against them. In this case, it allows him to gain confidence and manage his anxiety. And so, even after the time loop happens, I'm pretty sure he's going to make these great connections with people, and he's going to learn more about these people because he's growing with them. And that growth will allow them to encourage each other and also acknowledge the other person. So that's good. So yeah, it's a time loop story with such a unique perspective and like a unique idea, especially because it's a love romance story that I absolutely adored. But yeah, highly recommend it.